Hey guys, it's Sutonia here. Sorry for being pretty inconsistent with the videos lately. I decided I would make a new video showcasing the Triglavian ships. This is on the Singularity server right now, and this is going to be the ships that are arriving for the new expansion on May 29th, Enter the Abyss. So the Triglavians will have 3 ships. If you want to take a look at the skill requirements for them, they'll just require a precursor frigate, there's a precursor cruiser skill, and precursor battleship. These ships will be very easy to train. They only need the frigate and cruiser to level 3 for the battleship, and spaceship command level 5 for the cruiser, level 5 for the battleship, level 4 for the cruiser, level 1 for the frigate. The main traits that these ships have is they have bonuses to utility highs. So this is the ship that all of these Triglavian ships have this, which is 100% bonus to remote armor repair range. And they also have a half cap cost for all utility highs. So energy nukes, remote armor repairers, and smart bombs. The main mechanics that these ships are going to use is the new precursor turret called the Disintegrator, which is going to be exclusive to the Triglavian ships. So just the general feel of the ships is they have very high armor amounts but very low shield. They have a lot of utility highs. This is the battleship right now, has 4 utility highs. The cruiser has 3 utility highs, and the frigate has 2 utility highs. And the turret basically is like 8 turrets rolled into one for the battleship. It does a lot of DPS. And there's a special mechanic with these that causes them to do more damage over time. They charge up. We'll get to that in a second. The ships also are pretty fast, and they have a very low mass, which might make them very powerful for wormhole space. The battleship here is almost half the regular mass of most other battleships, so you'll be able to bring a lot of them through wormholes. And of course, having a lot of utility highs in wormhole space is very useful, because you can, if you're doing more PvE style things, you can have salvages in there, you can have cloaks, core probe launchers, that kind of stuff. They don't get any bonuses to probes at all, but you could definitely work a core probe launcher on here, maybe even a combat probe launcher if you sacrifice enough to get it on. They are pretty fast too. This is with 2 nanos, and the battleship goes almost 1.6 kilometers a second, which is very fast. In fact, this is actually about the same speed as most like double nano battle cruisers, and it has pretty good agility too. So that's what you can kind of expect from them. They also use radar sensor strength, and they have pretty high sensor strength, and they also have very large drone bays. So getting on to the new mechanic, the new turret. This is very similar to a Void Ray, if you're familiar with StarCraft 2, in that it's a weapon that charges up over time. You can see here that it has a 150% damage multiplier bonus. This is the cap, and you get 5% damage per cycle. So if I just take out this frigate here just to show it off to you, and I'll just warp to a customs office at a planet just to show you the stacking damage and how it works. So we'll just warp to the Planet 1 customs office over here to go and shoot something. If I just unload this here, they have really good range. This is about the same range that you would expect from beam lasers. If I just load this Tetron here, which is kind of like almost the neutral ammo, I have 8-kilometer range, which is very similar to small beams, while having the same tracking as blasters. You can see how that's really powerful, but you can see here it's only doing 116 damage per second. I'm just going to load a Colt S, which is the close range ammo. I guess I'll go over the ammo quickly. If I just unload this. So there's 3 Tech 1 types. Baryon is the sort of neutral optimal range type. It gives a 10% range bonus. Tetrion is the close range with a 30% range penalty, so not quite as bad as sort of multi-frequency gamma. It's about X-ray-ish. They don't actually have a super close range ammo that's not Tech 2. And Meson is the long range ammo, so this is sort of similar to your radio, iron, etc. Mystic S is the long range Tech 2 ammo, 50% range bonuses, similar to guess you can compare this to Aurora. and a Colt S is the close range ammo. So you can kind of compare this to conflagration. These both have a tracking penalty of 25% approximately, 0.75 times multiplier. So if we just go and load a Colt S, which is the close range ammo, just to show off the highest DPS potential. You can see here I'm doing 150 DPS with this one turret, and of course I do have drones on board too. If I start shooting at this Poco, I just mouse over here, you'll see the damage slowly ramping up. It increases by about 7.5 every cycle, up to a maximum of 150% damage, which means it's doing 2.5 times the damage at that cap. So at max cap, I'm doing 150 damage base, and at max cap I should be doing about 375. So that's like more than double mag stab, blast, or comet DPS. That's a lot of DPS, and that's got a pretty good range on it too of 7 kilometers. So a bit shorter than beams, but that's a lot of DPS, and the tracking on it is really good too. Of course, this frigate here only has the 2 mids, so this gun can be very powerful if you can get it to stack up to the max charge. Once we're at 70 here, we'll be at max charge. In fact, I can heat here. Also, heat management on these is very interesting. On one hand, you can heat for a very long time because you're only heating the one gun, and it has about the same heat properties of one normal gun. So you can heat this for a long time, but do you start heating at the start when you got low damage, or do you just heat all the time? We're now at max DPS here at 423 DPS, and in fact if we were using all of our drones here, we'd be doing 475 DPS. This is what a double mag stab Daredevil puts out. This is a lot of DPS, and of course I've got 2 remote repairers on here as well, and thanks to the cap reduction bonus, you can run these for a very long time and don't really have to use the injector. But I can see this frigate being very powerful in novices, maybe even small plexes, in factional warfare space. It could also be powerful in small gangs. If you can get just 2 or 3 of these guys, and you have 2 of them repping you, you got like almost 1,500 DPS between you, and you can put a bunch of reps on each other. I think this will be very powerful. Anyway, into more of the gun mechanics. They do not have any fall off, and they function just the exact same way that warp scramblers or stasis webifiers function. If you go out of range, it will stop firing completely. So if I just burn away here, and also if you stop shooting for any reason, if you swap ammo, if you get neutered out, if you get jammed, if you get damped, if you get tracking disrupted, you go out of range, anything, or you just want to swap targets, your damage ramp completely stops off, and you also can't activate it when you're out of range either. So you cannot build up charges outside optimal range. So the strengths of this gun are basically, if you can get into a position where you get at max charge, you're doing better than like close range, high DPS blaster options. The downside is that this weapon is very weak at switching targets. It's very vulnerable to E-War. If you get tracking disrupted by optimal range disruption, if you get neutered out, even if you get your cap back straight after, like if I get neutered and I whack my injector and turn it back on again, that's it. My ramp is gone. If you're shooting something far away and you get damped out, your ramp is completely reset. If you get ECM'd as well and you have to relock a target, you're done too, as well as a bunch of other things. For example, maybe you're shooting a Punisher in this and then a Daredevil lands. It's a really hard choice. Do you keep shooting the Punisher that you've already ramped up towards, or do you swap to the Daredevil? So there's lots of really cool choices with these ships, and there's a lot of vulnerabilities to the weapon system, despite the fact that it does have a lot of strengths. So obviously where these ships really shine is in long extended engagements between smaller sides. If you're killing stuff really fast, like in normal traditional fleet battles, or against just I guess waves of inexpensive cheaper stuff, then it will be better off. You'll be better off bringing another weapon system. So it's hard to say, but in sort of maybe like 5-man fights in factional warfare space or in wormhole space, that kind of ballpark where stuff doesn't really die all that quickly and you get a lot of time to ramp up, I think something like this could be very powerful. The frigate's going to be very interesting for solo, I think. I've just gone with this sort of small gang plex fit. Obviously, you need a tackler in this fit because you want the injector probably so you can run the reps reliably. Although you can perma-run one remote rep on someone. So maybe you could even just go for a scram instead and maybe fit something else like a Nosferatu in the other high. The cap reduction bonus is very powerful. And so I can see this being really, really good in just novice plexes in general, just because it does so much DPS if it ramps up. And then on top of that, you're also bringing half of a logistics frigate into the plex as well. So if you can just get 3 of these to like tank for a long time, ramp up, and then just kill someone through, you know, even insane amounts of logistics. The frigate itself, the unique bonuses it has, and all of these, although they all have the same roll bonuses, they have different bonuses between the ships. They all have a 5% damage bonus, and then they all have a different secondary bonus. So the frigate has the optimal range bonus, which is really useful, especially if you're going to be fighting in things like plexes and stuff, and you want to keep in remote optimal range of people. You don't really want to. You want a weapon that can shoot pretty fast. The cruiser has a tracking bonus, 5% bonus to tracking speed. So on top of the fact that it already has a very high tracking, this is going to be very good at just shredding people in close range, I think. I've gone for more of like a pseudo sort of Omen Navy issue, more brawling hybrid weird fit. One thing to mention is that there are no rigs for disintegrators, and there's probably not going to be any. That they may reconsider after launch, but there's not going to be any in the expansion. So there are no Tech 2 Locust rigs, which is probably going to hurt the kiting variations a little bit. For example, the Demavec, for example, with the long-range ammo here, Mystic S, the Tech 2 long-range ammo, only has a 17-kilometer optimal range. And since you can't fit locusts, and frigates don't really do too well with tracking enhancers or tracking computers, it's probably not going to be a retribution or a slicer replacement. And just like that, the cruiser's probably going to struggle to match the Omen Navy issue. And also, it doesn't really fit into the traditional anti-support role as well, because normally an anti-support cruiser like an Orpheus or an Omen Navy issue or a Sci-Fleet issue or what have you, normally you want them to do a lot of DPS in a short amount of time, generally to remove tacklers as they come in. Whereas since this has to charge up, it's not really as powerful as more traditional tacklers. Again, if we just undock this thingy, I probably won't go to the customs office to show off the damage on this, but you can see here it does 249 DPS to 32 kilometers right now with nothing loaded. If I just turn on my tracking computer, we're looking at 37 kilometer optimal, which is not too bad. It is acceptable, I think, in a maybe a skirmish gang, kind of, maybe not really. It's worth pointing out that this does have a double, has a medium newt and 2 small newts too. So if you've got Logi and you can go in close, this can be cool too. Of course, you could also do an armor brawler sit with remote rep, similar to what I did with the frigate on this. But at max charge with the long range ammo, we're looking at 625 DPS. That's a lot of DPS. That's what you expect from like a double mag stab 4-axis void up close, and that's with the long range ammo. If you are somehow in a situation where you can sit on someone with a Colt, which is the high damage ammo, 356 times 2.5. Well, it's gonna, on top of the drones that it has, you're looking at like 900 to almost 1,000 DPS. I think while you can hit, you can probably expect to get 1,000 DPS out of this. In fact, it's 410 now times 2.5. It's going to be over 1,000 DPS. So if you can ramp this thing up and get it close, you're out damaging a polarized vigilant with this thing. So a lot of DPS if you can get away with it. And maybe like a more, instead of the sort of pseudo kiting fit that I've got on here, with the newts and stuff. Maybe if you had like more of a brawling fit with remote reps on it, and you have a group of them together, or just maybe just have it for DPS by itself. It can just shred things if you get it up to high DPS. So these ships are going to be very powerful at maybe killing capitals or just big slow things that you tackle. Especially since you can pack like a lot of newts in the highs, so they might be very good at ganking capital ships if you can keep them alive. The battleship has insane DPS because not only does it have the 5% damage that all of them have, it also has a rate of fire bonus, and this is especially powerful on these ships because the rate of fire bonus is not only giving you the extra DPS, it's also making you ramp up faster. So this is kind of another sort of weird fit that they made just to sort of more of a kiting style fit with a micro jump drive. It can get a large smub on here, large newt too, so could be really decent for solo brawling. Being able to have a large smart bomb and a large newt is pretty awesome, especially if you can get like a few medium or small newts on there as well, so it can deal with frigates pretty well. If I load, I believe Meson is the long range ammo. You can see here we've got a 65 kilometer optimal. Throw on my tracking computer. That's 75 kilometer optimal with 523 DPS. Now, when you consider that's going to multiply by 2.5 times, if you ramp up, we're looking at 1,250 DPS or so before heat. If we heat this thing up, 600, probably going to be doing 1,500 DPS. That's not including how much drone DPS we're doing too. If the drones are on someone, this is slightly out of drone control range, so maybe it's not reliable. But this does a ton of DPS. And of course, if we load the close range ammo here, Tetrion, you could potentially be doing somewhere around 2,600 DPS or something. Maybe not quite that much, but like this is Vindicator DPS. Easily, like max gank, like incursion pimp fit Vindicator DPS up close if you can get away with it. So these ships are going to be very powerful, and especially the battleship because it has a very low mass as well. In wormhole space, you're going to be able to take a lot of these through wormholes. So pretty interesting. These things do get wrecked really hard by EWAR though, as I mentioned. In fact, I think something like a Crucifier can counter a fleet of these quite easily. Just have a Crucifier-free tracking disruptors with optimal range and just keep swapping between Triglavian ships. Not only do you stop them from doing damage for the 10 seconds, but then you're also just cutting their ramp. So something like a Crucifier would be very powerful at countering these ships, and you just keep swapping between Triglavian ships. So you could easily turn 4 Triglavian ships into one. Because you're just keeping the ramp at 0, and you're also stopping them from doing damage for 10 seconds on top of that as you cycle through. Again, if you get neutered out, and even if you inject and you're back at cap again, your ramp is gone. If you get damped, your ramp is gone. If you get ECM'd and you have to relock targets, your damp is gone. If you're killing, against a lot of... This battleship would be really weak against, a swarm of destroyers or frigates or something, because you'd have to ramp up each time against each one. So they're not very powerful at target swapping. They probably won't be very good at PvE because of that reason. Most PvE encounters generally are just waves of really weak ships. But in some encounters, maybe like factional warfare missions where you just have to kill the one boss. Maybe in some of the wormhole sites that don't really have that many NPCs, where you can, but they're more tougher in general, you can ramp up. Maybe in some of the DED sites where you have to kill the structures. Maybe not solo, but maybe if it was sort of accompanied by another ship. And you can fit smart bombs on this, so maybe you can get away with it. But generally, I think it's going to be pretty weak for PvE, but but maybe in some situations it would be a very good ship for PvE. Where these ships are probably going to shine are going to be a small gang. They're not really going to work very well in larger groups, larger gangs, because right now fleets are generally alpha focused. But also, like, once you get to a certain point, once you have enough ships, if you're killing stuff really quickly, then you're better off just bringing another weapon system. Where these ships really shine is when you can get up to that max ramp. And of course, you could also do like a remote rep battleship fit on this too, which could be pretty interesting. The battleship in particular right now has just got a ton of DPS and it's very powerful. And even when it's not ramped up, you can see it's still doing 1,000 DPS. Of course, that is counting the smart bomb here, but thanks to the fact that it has a pretty decent drone bay, it's still doing quite a lot of DPS. Although the fit that I'm using here is paper thin. And they're all quite fast too. For example, the battleship's going 1.6k a second cold. If we were to heat that, and I don't have any implants or anything in on this character. No implants or boosters. 2.2k with heat. If you add in like snakes and stuff, you could probably get this to go 2.2k a second. They also have pretty small signature radiuses too. So if we check out this Damovic here, you see it has a 32 meter sig, so it's smaller than a Firetail, and it's pretty quick too. It's bugged on here for some reason, but you can, if you mouse over it, you see it goes 996 meters per second, which is pretty good. Goes almost 1k a second with a shitty afterburner while having a plate and 2 Trimarchs. Pretty nice. So yeah, by the way, the code freeze is going to be hitting SISI pretty soon. So if you have any feedback, anything you want to discuss, I recommend you try these ships out on SISI. If you do have feedback, just post it in the thread on the official forums. These ships have been readjusted a few times now, which is kind of why I'm making the video now. They're pretty cool, man, especially if they have high tracking, especially the cruiser. I can see this being very powerful with, an afterburner or something, but they're pretty fun. You can try them out on SISI. You can buy the skills, and you just need to extract skills from something else to inject them. The skills that they use are precursor, if I can spell that correctly. Medium precursor weapons. There's a skill for each size, as well as a skill for each of the frigate, cruiser, and battleship. There could be more precursor ships added at a later point, as well as different weapons. The disintegrators as well for the Tech 2, they have a disintegrator specialization skill each, and all of those skills are the same skills as the respective turret size too. And these turrets work exactly the same as other turrets, except for the fact that they have absolutely no fall off and do not work outside optimal range. So you can't spool up, you can't charge them up outside of range and then charge in or anything like that. And super vulnerable to tracking disruptors. Having to swap ammos also means you lose your ramp. But very, very powerful in the right circumstances. So anyway, I hope you like this video and stuff, and hope this explains the new ships, and recommend you try them out on SISI. Post any feedback if you have any, and thanks for watching.